Polybridge 3 gives you a variety of materials to use to beat the campaign, the weakest and shortest of which is the wood beam. This little guy breaks very easily, and in this video, I want to try to beat the first hydraulic world using only wood for support. And starting out now, in the first level of the campaign, this was already going to be pretty difficult. Now you can see here, there's a bunch of roads that are pre-placed and I can't move them at all. Normally, this isn't too big of a deal because you just pull these apart with hydraulics and then push them back together, but I can't use hydraulics here, so I'm going to need to come up with a more interesting solution to get these roads out of the way and back in place. Now the first thing I wanted to do here was lock all of the road pieces that I could in place that don't need to move. I sort of got this to work, but the roads folded in themselves a little bit. Now I was hoping here, if I added a little more weight onto the end, it might strengthen everything a bit more, but you'll notice now I get some kind of weird movement on this. While this isn't rigid, I thought it might actually be to my advantage here, because if I could just add a little bit more weight to the bridge, I might be able to pull it out of the way of the space shuttle. Eventually though, I just added too much weight on, and you can see the entire thing just ended up breaking on me. So next, I wanted to go for a more simple design here, and you can see instead of trying to bow multiple parts of the bridge, I'm just trying to get the last segment of road out of the way. This almost worked, but the problem is the wing of the space shuttle ends up clipping into it, and there's really no good way for me to avoid that. So once I saw that, I knew I needed to get my other idea working, but I was gonna need to be a lot more careful this time. My first idea now is to change around the two arms holding on the last sections of road. My plan was to have them bend a little differently, so instead of just pulling straight back, they'll actually angle slightly up as well to get out of the way of that wing. And once those basic segments put down, I ended up reinforcing it here, and trying it out, you can see I actually was able to pull it all the way back. This, of course, was a massive improvement over before, but I still need a way to get these back into place, and that's when I noticed something interesting. If you look at the way these vehicles come in here, you'll notice the space shuttle is a lot faster than the submarine. This made me think that maybe I could use the submarine intentionally running into wood to kind of work like a timer to push the roads back into place. So to do that, you can see I built up a chain of wood here, and you can see after I got it down quite a distance, it almost was working, but I needed a way to keep it in the way of the submarine. Now I knew this was going to be pretty finicky to get working, right? Because it pretty much had to be perfectly balanced so that once I cut off a bunch of weight, it'd slowly fall back into place. And with enough tuning now, you can see I'm still able to get it out of the way, but now it's just struggling a little bit to fall back down. Now to fix that, I just moved up all of these wood bars a little bit so they'd fall in the way of the submarine and they could all break at the same time. Finally with this, you can see it slowly comes up and then slowly falls back down after the space shuttle passed. This was exactly what I was looking for, and with this, now I just need to do the same thing on the other side of the bridge. The problem though is it's not quite as easy as a copy and paste since I have those bars that go from one bridge to the other. The way the bridges are loaded is super precise, and just copying these over directly was going to cause some problems. With enough prep work done though, I decided just to go for it and see if I could get it working now. This actually did seem to work pretty well, but you'll notice a problem. If the car tries to drive across now, the entire bridge ends up breaking. To fix this, I'm gonna need a way to link both sides of the bridge together and actually get stuck. Now fortunately, this level does have split joints, and my hope was that I could use a couple of them to link this all together. The issue though is if I try to put these in the middle of the bridge, the weight distribution is so perfect that the tiny bit of extra weight that a split joint adds is actually too much and causes them to break. Eventually though, I realized I could put them further away from the end of the bridge here, and this just barely doesn't affect them enough that it actually does seem to lock in place. Now after that first level, I was worried things were gonna get a lot harder, but level 2 here, I already managed to beat just using wood in my normal playthrough. This level overall is surprisingly easy, and I was hoping maybe there were a lot more like that. Unfortunately though, my hopes were immediately dashed, because you can see this next level here is going to be pretty difficult. Now the way I beat this did overcomplicate things a little bit, but I have a limited amount of road in order to get both cars across, and of course if I'm just using wood, it's not going to be super easy to time this all correctly to move it around. Now since the bottom car goes first here, I was thinking of using a straight line link linkage for it to get it to the other side, and this would be very convenient because I could just use a single road piece to do that. Now also, if you're wondering about these steel and rope pieces that are around, they get pre-placed into the level and I can't delete them, so to work around that, I'm just not going to use them in my design at all here, and they're pretty much only going to be a downside since they can get in the way a little bit. Now, the straight line linkage I build very often here, and now I just need to build up a tower to this very top joint here, and once I had this all constructed now, it seemed to be holding itself together. This was a good sign, but next what I need to do here is pull this over to the other side, and to do that, I wanted to use a rope and a pendulum to pull this down. Now, for the rope, I can't use actual rope, so instead I have to use a chain of wood pieces, and you can see me attaching this up to a few wood pieces on the right support beam. Now, once I got the weight right on this, you can see I was able to get this to the other side, but there was a slight issue. It seems like the way I have this set up, the road piece the car is sitting on is going to rotate up a little bit as it moves to the right, and what I had to do is add on one extra road piece to get this over. In theory, this is fine, but it's one less road piece I could use in the top here, so I was hoping it wasn't going to be too big of a problem. Now, speaking of which, if I just try to build across here, I'm not going to have enough road, but what I can do is space them apart with little gaps. Now, you can see me doing this here, and just by creating these little gaps, I can make this stretch quite a bit further. And once I got these roughly positioned where I wanted them, I could just use some wood to support them up here, and with not too much trouble, you can see now the final design. Now, this level certainly wasn't easy, but it also wasn't terrible, and you can see here with minimal difficulty, I was able to get this car over to the other side. Now, moving on to level 4 next. Fortunately, this one was also pretty easy. Normally, you could see here, I have a hydraulic in the middle that pushes up the end of the bridge, but there's really nothing stopping you from just making two separate bridges and having the truck go on the top and then the bottom. So you can see here, that's pretty much exactly what I did, and with very little changing around just to fix some reinforcing issues, this ended up working well. Of course, though, the next level couldn't have been easy, and you can see this one is significantly harder. Now I have these two massive boats that get in the way of the bridge, and you can see the way I have to pull it up 90 degrees and set it back down to get out of the way. So I was thinking here, and I realized I could probably support these center two pieces of road if I'm relatively careful. As long as I avoid these boats well enough here, I should be able to brace to the side islands and then use a chain of road up to the nearest support point. And now I just need to add on some support pieces to each of the ends of the island. This at least simplifies the problem a lot, so now I just need to set down two separate pieces of road in order to get across. Now, my first idea to do this was to use a couple pieces of wood, and you can see I'm trying to use some sort of timing mechanism to slowly let this down. My main problem, though, is it's just too difficult to get out of the way of the boat and ends up breaking. So next, you can see on the left side here, I'm building up a large triangle, and once I had that in place, I tried to use a few pieces of wood to attach it to the road. Now, this was supposed to keep it from falling too far to the right, and once I got this tuned about right, now I just need a way to keep it from falling too early. Now, for this, I realized I could softly brace against the left island here, and once I build up a couple of triangles for this, you'll notice now the road isn't moving. There's nothing keeping it from going over to the right, though, and once the car hits it, it starts to unfold. This was looking pretty promising, but unfortunately, my support triangle ended up breaking. With just a little bit of reinforcing though, I was able to keep it together, and you can see it unfold now and actually start to let the golf carts pass. Now, unfortunately though, I can't just copy this over to the middle because I needed the islands before and I don't have that now. Fortunately though, I do have one advantage here. Since the golf carts would have been moving for a while, they're going pretty fast, so if I just make a really weak support brace here, I should be able to intentionally break it and make the road fall down. Once again though, I had some supporting issues, so some stronger diamonds installed in place now, you can see the folding working. Now, I'm fairly surprised that nothing important ended up breaking on this, and with that done, now moving on to level 6. Now, this one's supposed to be your introduction to the hydraulic controller, and shows how you can make hydraulics move at different times to keep the bridge moving correctly. Now, of course, I'm not gonna have access to hydraulics, but I can still use the hydraulic controller with split joints to make some interesting things happen. happen. Now, starting out on the left side of the bridge, I wanted to take off the hydraulic and see if I could just build a ramp straight over this boat. It didn't really seem too steep at all, so it should have been relatively easy here, and see me building that up now. And with honestly not that many pieces of wood, you can see trying this out, the truck's able to get across here, and this was a pretty easy start. It's this second bridge though that's going to be much more difficult. I need to get the truck down from the top, and I need to let the truck on the bottom go up twice. For this, I was thinking of using a trapdoor design, and this will allow the truck on the bottom to slip under the top bridge before taking it up to the top. Now, once I had all my basic supports in place here, you can see trying it out now, this didn't really work so well. The truck totally gets stuck and really isn't able to make this move at all. So to make that work, I wanted to add on some wood pieces to work as a counterweight to basically make it lighter. This at least was a good idea, but the problem is it makes it a little too light, and now it bounces all the way down. It was around now though, I remembered I could use the hydraulic controller, and you can see me now dropping off a piece of the top bridge. This of course gets me closer, but I still need a way to get up to the top, and this isn't really gonna help with that. Now, this is when I cleared off what I had, and you can see me starting out once again. I had a new idea this time, but I did need to copy over a few of the things I made before. Basically, the bottom bridge stays the same, but there's something very special about the top bridge. You'll notice now, I'm kind of just building straight to the right and leaving a noticeable gap. This is gonna work well for getting the car across, but to get it back on top, I'm doing something interesting here. You'll notice I'm putting a bunch of wood pieces over on the right, and these are intentionally not attached to anything. Now as I detach them, you'll notice they intentionally break and fall down. With an extensive amount of tuning here, I was able to get them to fall perfectly down on the ground so that they wouldn't break the roads, but they would make it fall all the way so the truck could get on it. With this, the truck was able to get on top here, and that beats that level. Now, you've probably noticed by now, a lot of these solutions require quite a bit of cheese to end up working, and unfortunately, this next level is not really gonna work with that. For this, I need a way to get the van across and the small car back and forth. This makes it significantly more difficult because getting something back means that I need some symmetry that's kinda hard to make work. Now, I deleted off the two middle sections of this bridge, and you can see I'm supporting the edges here, but the other issue is this boat is so huge that I don't really have a lot of room to work with. Whatever I wanted to do here was going to be very involved, so I wanted to skip ahead for now and move on to level 8. This one is actually kind of similar, and you can see I have a similar sort of difficulty. I don't have to go back and forth, but just trying to go through the middle here is surprisingly hard. The thing is, I'm so far extended in the middle now, and trying to lock something in place is difficult since the massive balloon is kind of getting in the way of the roads. I tried to do something similar to what I did in level 5, but getting this sort of locking design isn't really gonna work here, and I decided to skip this one as well. I was definitely not making things easy for myself later, but trying out level 9 here, I wanted to see if there's anything I could do. Fortunately, this level was a bit easier, and you can see it's basically a simple hydraulic level attached to a big bridge. Now, I decided to keep most of the support of this bridge here, and you can see I'm building a roadway over the boat. Now, I thought that maybe this should just be a really easy solution, and once I had that in place, I started replacing a bunch of the steel with wood diamonds. Unfortunately, though, that's when I realized there was a checkpoint star inside of the boat, and I wasn't gonna get away with this quite so easily. So I deleted off a lot of my road, and you can see now I'm building one that goes back through the boat. I know this road is gonna get destroyed eventually, but I figured that might actually be okay. The thing is, that checkpoint is only for the first car, so if I could have that one go through the bottom road and then have a second road on top of the boat for all the other cars, it might actually work. Getting this weighted properly was a little annoying, but you could see here I actually was able to get this to mostly work, and I started to get the motorcycles on it. Unfortunately though, the second bike is really low on power, and it wasn't even able to get up a slope this shallow. By carefully moving up some of the roads though, I was able to just barely smooth this out enough that I could get through. Just a tiny bit more tuning, I was able to make this work, and you can see now both bikes are able to make it over to the other side, and that ends up beating that level. Now, level 10 next here kind of looked bad because you can see I need to lift up a pretty big section of road in order to get out of the way of this boat. After looking at it a little more carefully though, I was wondering why I was even using this road at all. It is pre-placed, but there's no reason that I can't just build my own road over this boat here, so that's pretty much exactly what I did. It's more expensive, of course, but I don't really care. So as long as it works, we're in pretty good shape. So I built up some supports again with some wood, and you can see after I got this all placed through here, it seemed to work fine. The road on the bottom ended up breaking, but again, it doesn't really matter because the car is able to get across here, and that beats that level. Now, in fact, here, there's quite a few levels in this campaign that seem to imply you should use hydraulics, but they really just aren't that necessary. In fact, this level here seems to make you want to make them go over these boats, but there's no reason at all. You can't just make this weird wavy bridge and support it on the bottom. It's really not even that weak at all, and you can see here, I was able to get over to the other side and pretty easily beat that level. And now moving on to the last level in the campaign, this one is actually kind of difficult. You can see the way I originally beat this was by rotating over the entire bridge, and while this is slightly overcomplicated, it isn't gonna make it any easier for me right now. Now, fortunately, I do have the hydraulic controller, which means I thought there was a chance I could drop the bridge at any time that I wanted. So in the middle of the bridge here, you can see I basically made a big pivot point, and now by weighting down the bridge with some extra wood, you can see I can make it fall down to the other side and maybe let the car get across. It was a little too fast at the moment and ended up breaking, so to fix that, what I needed to do was add in some extra roads to keep this from moving. Now with these in place, it was just slow enough that I was able to get on the bridge now, and you can see here it doesn't break. Unfortunately though, it's still just a pivot point, and once the car gets over, it weights it down and falls into the water. Now, I built up a road on the end here to meet up with the bridge, but it also serves another purpose. This is to make a mechanical lock to hold the bridge from moving early, and by making this, I was actually able to lock this in place here, and you can see that ends up beating that level. Of course, though, we still have a little unfinished business, and there was 2 levels earlier that I ended up skipping. Now, I decided to start out with level 8 here, and you can see I'm trying to make some sort of design where there's like kind of a trapdoor that comes down, but this was really overcomplicated, and I couldn't get the weight distribution right so that it would fall at the correct time. It was at this point, though, that I realized I maybe was just making things significantly more difficult for myself, and while I do have a limited amount of road, I can actually just build under the blimp here, and it's completely fine. I thought this gap was going to be an issue, but you can see bracing this to the wall now and getting everything in place, it really ended up being totally okay. I was able to get the car across pretty much no problem, and while it did require a lot of reinforcing, this ends up being level, and it beats it under budget. Level 7, though, is still super annoying. The problem is that I just really don't have a good way of making the bridge reconstruct itself after the boat comes through, and of course, while I do have the hydraulic controller, this is only so powerful, and there's really only so much I can do. Now, I tried to make some sort of locking bridge design in the middle here, and you can see after the car goes through, I sort of have these fold back and try to get out of the way. With a lot more difficulty, I made some mechanical locks to hold these back, and while I actually was conserving the roads here, I need a way to unlock them and get them back in place, and I just didn't see a good way of doing that. The best attempt I ever got here at least made one of the roads start to swing free after the boat came through, but this was still a long way away, and fortunately with the way that this level works, it just seems like it's kind of impossible without a hydraulic. But guys, if you want to attempt this level, definitely make sure to join my Discord server and see if there's anything we can do to beat it. But otherwise, guys, if you liked the video, make sure to, like the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more Poly Bridge 3 content. If you have any other ideas for challenges, make sure to leave those down below. And otherwise, till next time.